What is up, everybody? Single pin versus multi-pin bow sights. That is the question. And to help us pin down some answers to that question, we've got Mr. Larry McCoy from the Outdoor Group, CBE bow sights, all sorts of great things going on. He's sitting across from me virtually and going to help us out today. So, Larry, you haven't been on the podcast before, so welcome. It's awesome having you here. Real quick, because we haven't had you on, maybe give us a kind of a quick bio of what you do have going on.
Yeah, so I'm Larry McCoy. As you stated, I'm the media director for the Outdoor Group, which owns CBE sites. And, talking about this is a common topic that, today's show is focused on anyway, get asked it all the time. It's grown in popularity as far as because there are different variables in both sites. But I'm the media director at the Outdoor Group, so we own CBE sites. I also run the television show and been in the production side of things for quite some time. It was kind of my segue into the outdoor space. And that show's called Respect the Game, and you can watch it literally anywhere that you consume outdoor television or outdoor content.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, this is a question, you and I have talked a little bit. I've been trying to answer it for myself even and done a little bit of back and forth. I'd say historically, I've always shot multi-pin sights. And then I was like, you know what? I'm thinking about going to a single pin. I'm like, in my mind, and you're gonna, add a lot of, actual information, because this was just like speculation on my part. I'm like, man, I think if I go to a single pin, I'll be more intentional with my shots. Maybe, and anyway, so before I ramble on, because like I said, you can even tell by the way I'm talking, like I'm still undecided. The bow that I have on the table here right now, I put a single pin on, I shot it for a little bit, then I went back to my multi-pin, which I think that's kind of where I've personally settled. But what are your thoughts? What are when people are asking you that question, what types of things are they weighing?
Well, there's a lot of things you have to look at when it comes to a single pin versus a multi-pin or a fixed pin as well, because they have movable sights now where you can really reach out and touch, your target. You can shoot that 50 yards and beyond, or you have a fixed pin where, everything's kind of set. And the first thing is, knowing where you hunt and what you have planned to go hunt. If you like to travel and hunt, if you're going to do some Western hunts, I would probably recommend a, more of a movable type site, just in case that opportunity is out there, and making sure you're practicing outside of, that 40 yard max window or whatever, making sure that you can maybe extend your range just a little bit. It's really about wherever you're comfortable. But most importantly, when it comes to single pin, multi-pin is sight picture. Hunters and shooters across everywhere, they overlook sight picture. If you can't clearly see what you're shooting at, you're not going to shoot that well. You're going to be guessing a lot and probably not even realize it, because we're all creatures of habit. So you'll see that pin start to float, whether it be a horizontal pin or a vertical pin like this. It'll start to float, and I call it drive-by. And so that pin will get close, and then boom, you're touching her off, and you got to do that the exact same every time to be able to get that group really tight. So sight picture, being able to see is of the utmost importance. And also, like I said, knowing where you're going to hunt. Even if you hunt your farm or the farms that you hunt in the fall for whitetails, and that, okay, this property is heavily timbered, you can get the right site for where you're going to be hunting. A multi-pin or a single pin adjustable just allows you to be a little bit more flexible on where you're going to be hunting and stuff, for where those shot opportunities, are going to exist.
Does a single pin, and I guess when I think of like a single pin, I think of a single pin slider, right? Like a movable sight. Is that often a go-to for like a lot of maybe your Midwest archery stuff, where you've got a place and maybe you do have a max of 40 yards or something like that you think you might shoot?
Yeah, it has been a very, very popular selection for a lot of hunters. Although here recently, we've seen people start to gravitate to a multi-pin sight, back to it, because their biggest fear, and I'm sure if you're thinking, whoever, if the listeners out there are thinking, man, if I go to a single pin, what if that deer or animal's at 20 yards and kind of bumps out to 40? How am I going to move my sight real quick and be somewhat accurate? Well, a fixed pin or a multi-pin kind of takes care of that situation. So, but you got to think of it, put yourself in that situation is very possible in the outdoors or in the woods. You can't predict really anything. So I look at it like this: if an animal is out past that 40-yard range, I'm not going to shoot. Most likely, not going to have an opportunity to shoot at him if it's keyed up, if he's nervous, or because you got a lot better chance of that animal reacting. So if I know that that animal's keyed up and I'm not going to have the time to move my sight, usually I let it go. Although with a multi-pin, your mind tells you to adjust. Okay, he's 20, he went to there. I can go down to my bottom pin and and actually make that adjustment just on the fly. But CBE, we offer a 1-pin, 3-pin, or 5-pin movable, and also we offer a 5-pin stationary. So about anything a hunter would want. The hardest part is making the decision of what you want to shoot, because there's plus and there's pros and cons to really all of them based upon you as a shooter.
Mm-hmm. I've heard some guys say, I'd say like particularly in the whitetail woods, and maybe this is like good advice, maybe it's not good advice, but they're like, oh yeah, I shoot a SinglePin slider. I keep it at 30. If I got a deer that's inside, that's 20 or inside 20, I hold a little low. If I got a deer that, like you said, maybe he bumps out to 40 or takes a different trail and you got to make a quick adjustment, then they're like, yep, I practiced with that sight. I know my holds and I know how I just need to hold a little bit higher. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that, it's really whatever works for you. That is definitely obtainable the more you practice. And in real life, a lot of people don't have the time to practice as much as they should. But if you can practice and know that, then single pin is going to give you a very clear sight picture of your target. There's no doubt you only have one pin to worry about. Majority of the single pins out there are vertical. There are some horizontal pins out there, but there's a lot of other gauges that you can use on a single pin as it pertains to that. Like the pin being vertical, a lot of people will lay that pin on their front leg and raise it up and down. That way they know, and then they can slide their horizontal axis on where it really needs to be, because now they know that their height is right and their pin's not going to float as much. But so there's a lot of ways. It comes down to the individual, and I think that I feel like I can be really, really precise with a single pin, me personally as a shooter. But I personally hunt with a multi-pin floater, and that's what I've chosen just because I hunt a lot of different areas, a lot of different, I've been to several different states. So I may be hunting open country, 1 week, and then I may be hunting the hardwoods of, Missouri, the next week. So I can adjust and adapt. And I actually have a multi-pin floater right here. So I don't know if you can see that, but this is actually a 3-pin. It's got 3 pins right there.
Yep.
What happens is I can set this to where those 3 pins are home, like I call it the home position. And you'll have a sight scale that goes on here after you get it sighted in. And say on this one, like I can say 20, 30, 40 is my pin set up. My needle on my movable sight is going to be at 40 yards. Mm-hmm. So it's home. So I may never have to move that the whole season unless I'm practicing. But if I'm out west and I do have something at 55, I can then just unlock this, and I can roll this down. See?
Yep.
I can roll this down and up, and then I can utilize my whichever pin you designate as your floater. You can go to dial down to that yardage and choose a pin and shoot it. So that's why I shoot that and a 3-pin just leaves my sight picture pretty open, so that for my eyes, it seems to work best for me. That or a single pin, but that's the setup that I usually choose. They do make a 5-pin movable as well for guys that really like to stretch it out, which is great as well if your eyes and you can adapt to that sight picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my personal sight journey here, Larry, like I said, I've always shot a MultiPin, and then I went to a MultiPin Slider, which actually the one that's on my bow right now might be the one that you had. I think it's the CBE Engage Hybrid Pro. And I really settled on that one for a lot of what you were saying. Like, I liked the 3-pin. It's like, yep, 20, 30, 40. Those are going to be like the vast majority of my shots are going to fall within that range. But then if I do want to stretch it, maybe I'm hunting antelope out west, maybe I'm hunting, whatever, what have you, where you might have to extend your effective range if you're effective and comfortable shooting that far. Then you got that slider, and I guess my other thought process, hopefully, if I'm going to execute a shot that is longer, I do have the time to turn that sight. And same with you. Like I was like, okay, 3 pins, like a very clean sight picture compared to maybe like a 5 or a 7 or something like that, which I've seen at times. But what drew me when I was really strongly, and I'd say single pin isn't out of the game for me, but man, the sight picture is like, it is hard to beat. I mean, you've got that single vertical pin. You do have the adjustability to dial those shots at extended ranges, but just like, I mean, that single vertical pin is just like poof. Like, there's no question what you're doing. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, and that's what I mean by you can be really, really precise with that single pin, because that's the only thing in the housing that you're looking at. And like you said earlier, you had mentioned earlier about holding over, and some guys like to hold over at that if they're not quite sure, they're 1 or 2, 3 yards off, they can hold over and still be effective as far as in the hunting situation. But one thing that does help with that is, like I said, practice going out, and I'll practice outside a lot of times of my range. So I may practice at 70 yards, 60, 70, even 80 yards first. And then when I move up and start shooting, my sight picture, so it looks like I'm shooting, if I'm shooting at dots, looks like they're softballs out there, because my sight picture has been looking at such a small target, and all of your mistakes magnify at that distance. So you can really identify what's going wrong and have the opportunity to fix them to make you that much better of a shot whenever you're at 40 yards and in. So that's a tip that I do a lot. I like to practice from a little bit longer distance. I'll start there because it really gets me focused, and as far as being able to really hone in and make sure my pin is settled, because like I said, at a longer distance, if your pin's floating and you're have some imperfections, they're going to show up at a longer distance, and they will more so than they will when they're you're closer to the target.
Yep. Yeah. The adjustability in this 3-pin slider that I have, like, I really like how you can micro adjust the pins individually. You can move all the pins together just depending on what you tighten and loosen. You can get, like, as far as like adjustability and ease of adjustability, this is probably like the best sight that I've personally had. But what about, I guess, there are more pins, so you have more going on as far as like just the sight in process. And, maybe you are going to have a sight tape, or like, this one, some of the other ones, they come with those, just like that pack of like metal sight tapes, and you just kind of, go through that process, figure out which one is right. And then you've got, your adjustment graduations for when you want to, use the mover on the sight. But what about sighting in? Like, is one more simple than the other? Like, is that a consideration for a person?
No, it's the same concept for both. A lot of people get confused when they're sighting in a multi-pin, because you only have one pin to worry about with a single pin. So the process is somewhat simple. CB's made it really simple. And with a multi-pin, you can literally choose the pin. Like I like to use my bottom pin as the floater.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll sight my bottom pin in at 30, and I'll make a mark on the sight. You can see on the sight there's a white piece of tape right here,
mm-hmm.
a white metal plate. CB offers metal plates on these sights,
mm-hmm.
so you can make a mark where your needle's at 30 yards. Then you roll her down and back up to 60 yards, and you will make a mark whenever you're sighting at 60 yards. The biggest mistake people make is they move the sight after that. Leave your sight there at 60 yards, where your needle's at, where your mark's at. And like I said, CB has made it really easy. They've produced a little tool, this little tool here has a 30-yard mark on it, and then a bunch of graduation marks that'll tell you that coincide with all the sight tapes that come with it. So it'll tell you exactly what sight tape you need to put on there. So it's just as easy as pulling the tape off there without, you haven't moved your sight from 60 yards, putting it on there. And then if it's not if your needle's not lined up with 60, then what you can do is just loosen the Allen screw on the needle and slide your needle to 60 because your sight housing hasn't moved. And now you can roll it up to back to 30 yards, walk up to 30, or walk out to 70, whatever, dial it to 70, and you should be on like Donkey Kong. I mean, it's very, very accurate.
I like that. Why? And I did the same thing. My bottom pin is my slider, but why do you like that?
I personally like that because I like to leave the top two pins alone, knowing that majority of my shots, like you stated earlier, is going to be 40 yards and in. So, so with that being said, going back to the sight tape though, I like my 40 yards and in. So my bottom pin will be, I can move my needle up to 40, lock it down. I may never have to move it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can go back and sight in my top two pins at 20 and 30 or 15, 25, whatever, and go from there. And then I can lock it in and leave it. So wherever your floater's at, that's where you're going to want your home needle position to be, all the time. But it's very, like I said, can seem complicated, but it's really not once you get in and start to use it and you become an actual user of moving to different yardages and moving the sight. You can actually hone in and see how accurate those scales can be.
Yep. And I guess, like you mentioned earlier, having the ability and the confidence to shoot at those further distances, it just makes those those closer shots just a lot more comfortable. Like your confidence goes way up. What about hunting versus target shooting? Like if you're, do you see one style more depending on the genre? Like if a person's like, oh dude, I'm a target archer, I'm shooting spots, I'm going to tournaments, like that's my thing. Are they generally shooting a different style of sight, or what style are they generally using? I should say.
They'll shoot the same style of sight. The majority of them will be shooting a single pin.
Mm-hmm.
That way, their sight picture's clear, open. They can be more precise. In the ASA world, you can, you have the 12 ring, what they call it, so they can, recognize where the 12 ring's at and then hold their pin right there. And then they also have, but as far as adjustments, there's not a whole, you still have your first, second, third axis adjustments. And you can micro adjust everything. But the one thing that I will say too that is available on the CBE sites as well is you can adapt to a lens. A lot of target archers will shoot a lens. Will shoot a 1, 2, 3, 4 power lens on the front of their housing. And what that allows you to do, it magnifies the target to where you can really be precise and put that one pin where it needs to be. Because they may be shooting 50 plus yards, and I know as I get older, my eyesight, I can definitely tell year after year I'm constantly chasing my eyesight to make sure that I can be the most effective that that I can be out in the field. But target archers, hunters, it's the same concept. A lot of the guys will shoot mainly a dovetail bar, that way they can slide in and out based for their sight picture and their peep size and versus a direct mount, sight. So they'll definitely use a dovetail bar usually versus a direct mount.
Gotcha. Now this question, I mean, we're talking about sights here, right? So, and this isn't really like how a single pin versus multi-pin, but what about pin colors? Like where does that come into play? Like, generally on, on my site here, or like, I guess I've had sites that would go like, green, like green, red, yellow. This one goes green, yellow, green, I believe. Like, where does color come into play? Is one better than the other? Do people's eyes respond differently to different pin colors? What's going on there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the answer to that is I can't say really which one works most effectively. Green is usually the most popular because it shows up more brighter in lower light conditions. But everybody's eyes are different. They pick up color a little bit different. So there's some people that shoot a blue pin versus a green pin, or even a red pin, versus a green pin or yellow pin. But It just really depends on the individual and their eyesight. Pin size, on the other hand, is very, very important. I know majority of the sight companies out there, CBE offers a 19,000 sight pin and a 10,000 sight pin. You have to think whenever a fiber optic is gathering light, it what they call starburst out there, it can burst up. So a 19,000 pin in a really sunny condition may blow up to 22, 23,000s. And shooting at a distance, you're covering up a lot of you. It's hard to be precise in those situations. So being able to control that is key. So a lot of times I shoot a 10,000 pin because of that. It's about 15 to 16 usually whenever in high sun, and then if you don't have a shade that can block some light from your fibers or whatever to keep it small, you can be more precise. But everybody's eyes are different, and it's really about shooting what you're comfortable in seeing, because if you can't see and be comfortable with your equipment, you're not going to perform well.
Yeah, and you nailed exactly what my next question was going to be, was, about pin size for accuracy and things like that, and some considerations there. And that's probably something where a person probably just needs to go see for themselves a little bit, right. what's going to work best for them. I prefer a smaller pin, like the 010s are kind of where I prefer that, and just for all the reasons, like I just, shooting, I find that they gather enough light for me, but they obscure the target, less, which is super important. Man, I think we've covered, kind of the pros and cons to each. There definitely are pros and cons to each. Did we miss anything? Did we miss anything, Larry, that a person should be thinking about when they're trying to choose, a single pin versus a multi-pin sight?
Well, the one thing too, there's a couple things that I just real quick we can go over, and one of them is the process. Whenever the shot process and picking your sight, which one, whether it be a single pin, or a multi-pin, and pin size, is you hear the old saying, pick a spot. There's so much truth to that. Pick a spot and aim small, miss small. You've heard all these sayings, and there's a lot of truth to those for you to become a better shot. And so when you pick a spot and you're aiming small, and you know that pin is there, that's a good way to pick your pin size. Because if you're at 20 yards and your pin is covering up what you're wanting to shoot at all the way, like a 3-inch dot or a 2-inch dot or whatever, and it's covering up, you may have to either slide your housing in or out or whatever to try to make that adjustment, cover up your thing, or go to a smaller pin, because it's going to allow you to be a little bit more precise. Now, obviously, when you back up, your target, becomes a lot smaller. So you have a better chance of it covering it up from there. But when you're shooting at your most effective ranges, which most likely is from 20 to 40, make sure that your pin is right there and you can see it and you can move it to where you want to go, and you're in control of that, which is it's a lot easier said than done, because your mind's very powerful and it tells you, send it when that pin gets close. Train yourself to hold it there and put it where you need to be, and then squeeze through the shot. A lot of people just overlook that because we're all creatures of habit. And I've got enough bad ones that I really got to think about the process every time I go out and practice to make sure that, so it's second nature when I do get in those hunting situations.
Yeah.
But, that's just something that I focus on personally when it comes to picking my pin size. And depending on, it may be different per manufacturer. CBE, they've got pretty true pin sizes. And so if you're going over to a Spot Hog or a different site or whatever, if you're shooting that and you choose to come to a CBE and you've been shooting a 19, try a 10,000. Look at the 10,000. Make sure you look at the different, because they could very well be a little bit different. Your 10,000s may be better suited for you with the CBE site than it was on a previous site that you owned.
Yeah, that's actually, like there's, potential for, like you said, like different specs, different tolerances, different, just like, not like it's standard, like, each company is going to have a standard, but it could be like a slightly different standard, so, nope, that's cool. So, what about new shooters? We got a lot of new bow shooters these days. is there one that you would suggest? Be like, you know what? If you're starting out, maybe lean this way, or just go with take all the things into consideration that we just talked about, and be like, pick the one that's right for you.
Yeah, if I'm a new shooter, I'm probably going to go with a multi-pin and really get effective from that 40 yards and in, making sure that I'm very repeatable, because all archery, whether you're shooting a gun or is making sure that you're consistent from one shot to the next. And with a bow, there's a lot of mechanics involved, though. It's just about being able to do the same thing over and over again every shot. That's going to make you a better shot. So if you're a beginning archer, I personally would recommend a multi-pin, just because you can really hone in and focus on those yardages, get well, and then start to ease your way back. And it takes some time to get used to it. It takes a lot of practice. It takes flinging a lot of arrows.
No, awesome. And I think you ended on a key there. You got to practice. These things aren't going to just develop themselves over time. I know it's like you said, that's a struggle for a lot of folks. A lot of people can't shoot in their backyard, and so you got to take time away from family or this or being, but unfortunately, there is not a substitute from putting in the work or for putting in the work.
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you, the one thing is, start somewhere. Go shoot, 10 arrows a day. That may take 10 minutes, may take 5 minutes for some, but start somewhere just to get out there, to get your muscle memory, everything to where you're comfortable shooting a bow. That way you can hone in and focus on the things we talked about when it becomes a natural motion for you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can dial it in and start focusing on the things that you really need to work on as it pertains, and start noticing when your sight pictures, not good versus good, and know that you have to make some adjustments there.
Would you say in some of those scenarios that less can be more? Like, because maybe you're firing 5 or 10 arrows, but you're being intentional, you're focusing, you're not getting fatigued, so you're like able to maintain that level of consistency and know what that good shot feels like? Or do you think that just being like, nope, shoot as much as you can?
It's a little bit different for everybody. Me personally, I like to shoot, I may go out and shoot 5 arrows. I may go out and shoot 30 arrows.
Uh-huh.
Every day's a little different. Your body reacts a little different every day. Humidity, everything. Some days I feel like I hold like a rock and you can't miss. You may go out there the next day and be like, what the heck happened? I'm floating. I'm really fighting, getting the pin. It could be what you ate that day. It could be, you just came off of, a pot of coffee or whatever the case may be. But your body does react to that. So being able to build a consistent routine as far as shooting 5 arrows, 10 arrows, or whatever it may be, that's going to help your body control that, because your muscles, and it's going to get used to going through those motions every single day.
Awesome. Well, that was a lot of really good information, Larry. I've got Jim, who I co-host the podcast with. He always makes fun of my printouts, but I have checked off every question that I had. Do you think, did we get it? Did we nail it? Did we nail it down enough that hopefully a person?
So. Yeah, I think so. To get a good perspective on a single pin versus a multi-pin, absolutely. Now you can dive into a lot of the details when it comes to sighting in and where you want your yardages and stuff to be, but that comes along. But I mean, I feel like if you're deciding whether you want a multi-pin, single pin, check your eyesight, make sure you have a good clean sight picture. If you're like in the store and you're looking at sights, hold the sight at, ask them if you can take it out and take it out of the box and look at it, and hold it out at arm's length and look through it, look through it, make sure, focus on something on the wall, something small, and whether you're going to, just to make sure that your sight picture is, because let's face it, everything costs money these days, and it's and always really has, but you want to make sure that you're spending your money wisely and you're going to get something you're going to be happy with.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully this helps you decide what sight style that you may go with in the future. And if you have any other additional questions on this topic, let us know that as well in the comments below. And happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Aim small, miss small. We'll catch you on the next one.